The dodo bird, the first woke bird. You know, people always say going the way of the dodo like it's being too dumb to live. You know, they say go in the way of the dodo, and there's all these jokes about the stupid dodo that's being an idiot, you know? The poor dodo's been branded as history's village idiot, a fat, clueless bird that waddles into the stew pot, and that's why he became extinct, because he's a moron. But have you looked at the numbers lately? Declining birth rates, people refusing to have kids, building their identities around hashtags instead of family trees. I'm starting to think that the dodo didn't die because it was stupid. It died because it was educated. You ever think about that? Maybe the dodo wasn't a dummy. Maybe the dodo was the nerdy people that went extinct because they got too smart. Yeah, like the dodo was basically the bird equivalent of your average modern overeducated liberal arts major. And I kind of include myself in some of these categories here, so I'm just saying I'm not like, it's not like I'm outside the realm of some of these things. I'm just saying it's likely that we might have to consider the possibility here that he got a degree in deconstructivist evolutionary ethics with a minor in post-flight gender theory. So it wasn't flightless, it just identified as grounded. It identified as grounded, so it's like it stopped flying. It was the first bird to look to the sky and go, flying is a social construct imposed by hawk supremacy. So then it stops the flying. That's how the colonialists do things. They like travel with and flight helps them do that. So you have to stop that. It probably held a protest called Defend the Wings, had little signs, no feathers, no fascism. Then it refused to migrate because migration was colonial behavior. Why should we move south? That's someone else's habitat. We'll stay right here and honor the swamp, for crying out loud. So it stayed right next to the tar pits, and Mother Nature said, all right, suit yourself. If that's the way you're going to reason this thing out, okay. I mean, you ever notice that the dodo didn't have predators? None. No predators. It got wiped out by philosophy. Every other animal's worried about food, survival, mating. The dodo's sitting around hosting TED Talks. Today we'll be exploring the ethics of eggs, people. They weren't extinct. They were too enlightened to breed. They called it reproductive minimalism. Didn't want to impose their values on the next generation, so they just stopped having one. The dodo believed in global warming. That's when the early bird gets shamed for breakfast privilege. You can't eat worms. We've got to raise awareness for them. They put out pamphlets. Don't consume worms. Coexist with worms. And then they starved. It's a sad story, but it's something that we need to learn from. And wind power. Wind power. The dodo was all in on the wind power back in the day. We think we figured it out now, but no, they were on it first. Refused to flap its wings. Said, we let the breeze carry us. We let the breeze carry us. We're not going to expend unneeded energy. The problem is the breeze never showed up strong enough to give them enough lift to get off the ground. So they just stood there waiting for government subsidies, for crying out loud. And don't forget decolonization. The dodo refused to live in trees because that was territorial oppression. They squatted in the mud proudly. They renamed the swamp the Autonomous Feathered Zone. And then a crocodile moved in. They called it diversity. Eventually, sailors showed up and said dinner. And the dodos didn't even run. They held a listening circle. Because they don't fly, they didn't run. So let's hear all perspectives, they said. Meanwhile, one guy's perspective was pass the salt. That's not stupidity. That's terminal education. It's the opposite of stupidity. It's terminal education. They were too self-aware to survive, people. They literally reasoned themselves off the food chain. They were the first victims of overthinking. And when people say, don't be a dodo, I say, dude, we already are. We're the only species intelligent enough to convince ourselves not to reproduce, not to defend ourselves, and not to question the guy that's actually eating us because it might be offensive to the guy that's eating us. So the dodo, so the dodo didn't go extinct. It graduated. It got its master's degree in extinction studies. Its thesis was titled Deconstructing Survival: Why Being Alive Reinforces Oppression. So yeah, going the way of the dodo used to mean being dumb. Now it means being it means being so enlightened you forget how to live. The dodo didn't fly because it was too busy filing paperwork for a grant. It didn't nest because nesting was heteronormative. It didn't fight back because it wanted to de-escalate conflict. And that's how it ended. Not with a bang, not with a roar, but with a polite email to an ecosystem that said, due to unforeseen circumstances, we've decided to step away from existence to focus on self-care. That's how it goes. The dodo wasn't stupid. It was the first species to cancel itself.